Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video we're going to be speaking all about the books that I want to read in the coming months, the books I want to read this year. I just realized that I never actually uploaded a video of my TBR for 2024, and normally this is a thing that I do in January. I do it every single year, and this year I just didn't do it. In total I have 28 books on this list, but one category of those books is actually a series. And also, before I jump into the video, I just wanted to really quickly thank Sonderflor. They have not sponsored this video, but they did send me 2 dresses for free, including this dress that I'm wearing. I have loved Sonderflor for absolutely years. I think their dresses are so beautiful. They have such a fairy tale quality to them. So this one is the mini Carmen dress. I really love it. I love the shapes. I love the pockets. I love the sleeves. And they also sent me the regular Carmen dress, which is now my favorite dress I own. I feel like a fairy tale princess every time I wear it. I do have an affiliate link in the description of this video in case any of you are in the market for a dress that makes you feel like a fictional character. Without further ado, let's jump into the video. Here's 28-ish books I'm really excited to read this year in 2024, even though it's already April. Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler, which is also the book that we're reading this month for our Patreon book club. I really loved Kindred. Maybe like 2 years ago, I read Kindred by Octavia E. Butler and I really enjoyed it. I really loved her writing style. I also tried out her writing routine as well, which is a really interesting like late night 2 a.m. writing routine. I don't tend to read a lot of dystopian sci-fi, but I will make the exception for Octavia E. Butler because she's an amazing writer. Written in the 90s, set in 2024, blurb says America is a place of chaos where violence rules and only the rich and powerful are safe. Lauren Olamina, a young woman with the extraordinary power to feel the pain of others as her own, records everything she sees of this broken world in her journal. I've heard wonderful things about this book and I'm very excited to read it as a part of our book club. Books 2 and 3 are both by the same author, and that author is Kirsty Logan. I think I first learned about this book, which is called The Grace Keepers, from Tumblr a very long time ago, and I was trying to buy it and I don't think there was an Australian publisher at the time, and so I was gonna have to go through this whole thing at Dimmicks where I was gonna have to special order it, and it was a whole thing, and so I just kind of like didn't end up picking up Kirsty Logan's work, god damn it, until I finally went to the UK and it was there and easily accessible. So the first one I'm reading is called The Grace Keepers, which is a circus story. There's a lot of water imagery. I am about this far through. Here is a quick lunch, which is a Norwegian chocolate that's kind of similar to Kit Kat, but it's really cool. I'll read some of the blurb to you. A flooded world, a floating circus, 2 women in search of a home. North lives on a circus boat with her beloved bear, keeping a secret that could capsize her life. Kalanish lives alone in her house in the middle of the ocean, tending the graves of those who die at sea. As penance for a terrible mistake, she has become a grace keeper. This story thematically is very me. Like, it's very in line with my tastes. I could see me coming up with a concept of a book which is similar to this, so I really wanted to read it. And then we also have The Gloaming by Kirsty Logan, which is a little bit more recent, I believe. Mara's island is one of stories and magic, but every story ends in the same way. She will finish her days on the cliff, turned to stone and gazing out at the horizon like all the islanders before her. Mara's parents, a boxer and a ballerina, chose this place as a refuge from the turbulence of their previous lives, but the island and the sea don't care what people want, and when they claim a price from her family, Mara's world unravels. So this is a very cool sounding story, a lot of water imagery again, which I love. I love the ocean. I especially love speculative books that are really high concept and have these really beautiful aesthetic explorations, but also have some darkness to them as well. That's like my favorite kind of thing. The next book on this list is Days at the Murasaki Bookshop by Satoshi Yagisawa, and also translated from the Japanese by Eric Ozawa. And I am being sent this book by the publisher, but it hasn't quite arrived yet, and I'm very excited to get to it. The main draw card for me with this book is that it's set in a bookshop in Jimbocho, which, if you don't know, is Tokyo's very famous like book district. I wrote a neighborhood guide on Jimbocho quite a number of years ago now, and it was the second piece of writing I ever got paid for. Jimbocho is very close to my heart. I love that neighborhood. But anyway, this book, Days at the Murasaki Bookshop, is actually set in Jimbocho, in that neighborhood that I really love. Hidden in Jimbocho, Tokyo, is a book lover's paradise. On a quiet corner in an old wooden building lies a shop filled with hundreds of secondhand books. 25-year-old Takako has never liked reading, although the Murasaki bookshop has been in her family for 3 generations. It is the pride and joy of her uncle Satoru, who has devoted his life to the bookshop since his wife Momoko left him 5 years earlier. When Takako's boyfriend reveals he's marrying someone else, she reluctantly accepts her eccentric uncle's offer to live rent-free in the tiny room above the shop, hoping to nurse her broken heart in peace. Takako is surprised to encounter new worlds within the stacks of books lining the Murasaki bookshop. It sounds like such a beautiful premise. It sounds not dissimilar to what you're looking for is in the library, and also Welcome to the Hyunam-dong Bookshop by Hwang Bo-ryum. Next one is Jean Rhys's Wild Cigar Sea. This was pitched to me by one of my best friends as a prequel to Jane Eyre. If you've not read Jane Eyre, maybe skip to this part of the video right here, because like what I'm about to say is a really big spoiler. This book is about the youth of Mrs. Rochester. Obviously, there's a lot of information we don't know about her, and so this story really is Jean Rhys speculating on what Mrs. Rochester's youth would have been like. Born into an oppressive colonialist society, Creole heiress Antoinette Cosway meets a young Englishman who is drawn to her innocent sensuality and beauty. After their marriage, disturbing rumors begin to circulate, poisoning her husband against her. Oh, I wonder who her husband is. Caught between his demands to her own precarious sense of belonging, Antoinette is driven towards madness. The next two books I do not have heaps of context around. They are the books that I picked up in Norway. This first one is The Ice Palace by Tarjei Vesaas. This is apparently a classic, like a really well-known book. The school children call it the Ice Palace, a frozen waterfall in the Norwegian fjords, transformed into a fantastic structure of translucent walls, sparkling towers, and secret chambers. It fascinates two young girls, lonely Un and lively Sis, who strike up an intense friendship. When Un decides to explore the Ice Palace alone and doesn't return, Sis must try to cope with the loss of her friend without succumbing to a frozen world of her own making. I also got The History of Bees, which is by Marja Lund. I wanted at least one book set in Norway. This is set in England in 1851, the United States in 2007, and China in 2098. I thought it sounded really cool, like a really interesting speculative book, and it's described as dystopian and electric. Haunting, illuminating, and deftly written, The History of Bees joins three very different narratives into one gripping, thought-provoking story that is just as much about the powerful relationships between children and parents as it is about a very relationship to nature and humanity. I think that sounds very cool, and I'm very excited to read it. The next book on this list, or rather the next 13 books on this list, are all a series of unfortunate events by Lemony Snicket. I am determined to reread that whole series this year. This is one of my favorite book series of all time. I have such strong memories of being 10 or 11 years old, I think, just borrowing these books one by one from my school library. The ending was the most mind-blowing thing. Like, it was so influential to me. I think I was 12 by the time I finished reading the series, and that ending was just like to this day, my favorite ending of a series ever. The very first one is called The Bad Beginning, and it follows three orphans, Violet, Klaus, and Sunny Baudelaire, whose parents have perished in a terrible fire. I love the passage of time in these books. I love the way the kids grow up during these 13 stories. Moving on, the next book on this list is also a nostalgic children's favorite, and it is The Magician's Nephew by C.S. Lewis, which I believe is the first Narnia book. I've never read the Narnia books. I watched the first film when I was really young, and it left a really massive impression on me. So actually, this is the 6th published Narnia book, but I believe it is a prequel, so that would explain why I got confused. Anyway, the blurb is, Narnia, where the woods are thick and cold, where talking beasts are called to life, a new world where the adventure begins. Diggory and Polly meet and become friends one cold, wet summer in London. Their lives burst into adventure when Diggory's uncle Andrew, who thinks he is a magician, sends them hurtling to somewhere else. They find their way to Narnia, newborn from the Lion's Song, and encounter the evil sorceress Jadis before they finally return home. I know this book is so well loved. I know it's been very influential to a lot of authors I really love, and so I'm really excited to check it out, and if I like it, I'm hoping to read the rest of the Narnia books, but I do just want to check out this first one before committing to doing more than one series this year. The next book I have on my list is called The King of Elfland's Daughter, and it is a 1924 fantasy by Lord Dunsany. I don't know very much about this story, aside from the fact that it was written in the 1920s, and you guys know how I've been with 1920s books over the course of the past 3 years. Project Teacup, like the setting is loosely inspired by the 1920s, and so I've made a really big effort to read a lot of 1920s books, and also English folklore and fairies and the folk tales of the British Isles have always really interested me. I love Led and the Mist by Hope Mirrlees, which was also written in the 1920s and very much a fairy-esque story, and so really I want to read The King of Elfland's Daughter because it falls into that same category of 1920s 1920s fairy-esque story. I've also heard Neil Gaiman reference it a lot. There was a reference to it at this like fantasy exhibition I went to in London. And so maybe over the course of the past year and a half, I just keep hearing references to it. And so I really want to read it just to see what I think of it. The poetic style and sweeping grandeur of The King of Elfin's Daughter has made it one of the most beloved fantasy novels of our time, a masterpiece that has influenced some of the greatest contemporary fantasists. The heartbreaking story of a marriage between a mortal man and an elf princess is a masterful tapestry of the fairy tale following the happily ever after. The next book is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I've never actually read this book. I read what I believe was an abridged version when I was a child. I borrowed it 3 or 4 times from my primary school library, and it was not the whole novel because it was illustrated, but it pretty much told the entire plot of the story. So I've always known the plot of Little Women, but have never actually sat down to read it. I love the Greta Gerwig film so much. I've rewatched it a bunch of times, and Tyler got me this beautiful edition of the book for my birthday, which is just so stunning. It has this beautiful Christmassy snowscape on it. It's about 4 sisters, Jo, Amy, Beth, and Meg, and they are growing up in America during the time of the Civil War, and it kind of follows them finding their place in society, working out who they are, what they want to do, who they want to be. It's a really beautiful, really sad story, and I'm really excited to finally read it as a novel in its original form. The next one is The Idiot by Elif Batuman. This is an academic novel insofar that it is set in a college. I, a while ago, was like looking down the list of most recommended college/university novels, and this one came up a lot. I've heard really, really good things about it. I've seen great reviews. The blurb is, Selin turns up at Harvard and finds herself dangerously overwhelmed by the challenges and possibilities of adulthood. How does she find friends? How will she fall in love? How does she deal with how difficult it is to be a failed writer and how baffling love is? At once clever and clueless, Batuman's heroine shows just the perfect hilarity and soulful inquisitiveness, just how messy it can be to forge a self. It sounds like a really interesting novel. I got really intrigued by it towards the end of last year, so I ordered it. I love The Secret History by Donna Tartt, as I've mentioned countless times, but I'm kind of always on the lookout for these like interesting like academia like stories, and I like that she's a writer, and it just sounded very intriguing to me, so I'm excited to read this. The next book is Mystery Cults in the Ancient World by Hugh Bowden. I first saw this book in New York in the Strand bookstore, I think, and it was such an interesting like non-fiction premise that I ended up picking it up, and it's been super helpful so far because I've been doing research on some like ancient cult stuff for novel writing reasons later on. We're not gonna dive into that because we're still very much in Project Teacup land right now, editing draft 6, but I got this for future novel reasons. I have an idea I'm very excited about. I've only read the first maybe third of the book so far. Maybe that's a little bit more than a third. The parts I have read have been really intriguing. I'm really interested in the social dynamic of cults and how people can be brainwashed and how these like kind of strange communities can come together where people behave in ways that are really, really bizarre in isolation, but when they come together under a really powerful leader, they can do just the weirdest stuff. So far, the book has been interesting, and I'm really excited to read it this year. At some point, I just have to push through to the end, but it's been a little while since I've read a new nonfiction book, so I'm excited to get to this. The next book on this list is a poetry compilation by Tishani Doshi, and it is called Girls Are Coming Out of the Woods. I've been trying over the last couple years to read more poetry. This one sounded really intriguing and interesting. There's a recommendation on the back that describes the book as artistic elegance with a visceral power to create a breathtaking panorama of danger, memory, beauty, and the strange geographies of happiness. This is essential, immediate, urgent work, and Doshi is that rare thing, an unashamed visionary who knows that while you and I go on with life remembering and forgetting, the poets remain singing. I'm hoping there's a lot of natural imagery here, a lot of explorations of girlhood. I'm excited to read this poetry compilation. The second to last book I want to talk about is Strange Beasts of China by Yang Gi, translated from, I believe, the Mandarin by Jeremy Tiang. I am certain I've mentioned this book once before, but I'm planning on reading it really soon, which is why I'm comfortable bringing it up again. It's a really interesting speculative novel set in China, and I'm gonna read the blurb to you. I'm pretty sure I did this last time, but I swear I'm gonna read this book really soon, and I'm very, very excited to do so. In the city of Yong'an, an amateur cryptozoologist is commissioned to uncover the stories of its fabled beasts. These creatures live alongside humans in near inconspicuousness, some with ancient forebears and others engineered as artificial breeds. I've heard so many wonderful things about this book. It has a beautiful cover, by the way. I love this shade of blue with the pink. I think it's really, really pretty. I promise the next time I mention this book, I will be telling you that I have finished reading it. And then the very last book I want to mention is Macbeth by William Shakespeare. I picked up this copy of Macbeth, this very pretty little blue copy. What are these editions called? Okay, so this is the Macmillan Collector's Library, these little pretty blue and gold-ish books. I love them. I have Goblin Market by Christina Rossetti in this type of edition. I got this from the Globe Theatre in London. I went into that gift shop and I wasn't planning on buying anything, and then I spotted the Macbeths, and Macbeth is my favorite Shakespeare play. I've read and studied a whole bunch of Shakespeare plays. We did not end up going and seeing a Shakespeare play at the Globe. They were playing Othello when we were there, and Othello is maybe my fifth or sixth favorite Shakespeare play, and so like I wasn't motivated enough to sit through 3 hours or stand through 3 hours of that play being on. If they had been playing Macbeth, we definitely would have gone. But yeah, it's been a while since I've reread Macbeth. I love the witches in Macbeth. The three witches are such influential figures. They're such an amazing archetype that a lot of authors have drawn from, and you know, they've inspired a lot of different witchy fantasy media. So love the witches in Macbeth. I'm excited to reread it because it's been a few years since the last time I read it. In total, I think I recommended you 28-ish books. These are the books I'm most excited to read or reread in 2024 in the coming months. I do have like 50 or 60 other books on my TBR as well, but these are just the ones that are at the very, very top of the list. So hopefully there were some fun recommendations for you guys out of this list. Hopefully you can find something interesting to read. Thank you so incredibly much for watching this video. And before I go, I wanted to say a massive thank you to everyone over on Patreon for supporting my content. As I said, we're going to be reading Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler for our book club this month. We have our private Discord server. I've been making a lot of bespoke videos recently on writing craft because that's what everyone keeps requesting. So I just uploaded a video where I was speaking about Project Teacup and how I'm editing draft 6. So if you'd like bonus content from me, or if you'd just like to support what I do here on my channel, please feel free to check out Patreon. Take care everyone, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.